Welcome to the Touch MBA Admissions Podcast. Do you need help figuring out which schools to apply to or how to get into the world's top MBA programs? Hey, you're not alone. Join thousands of others on this podcast and on our site, touchmba.com, as they seek the admissions edge. And now, here's your host, Darren Joe.
Hey guys, welcome to the Touch MBA podcast, episode 29. This is your host, Darren, and this week we are speaking with Dr. Michael Shulver of Warwick Business School, based in the UK. I really enjoyed my conversation with Michael. He's a straight shooter. He pulls no punches, and he tells it exactly how it is in terms of the academic environment at Warwick, to admissions, to scholarships, to career placements. And so I think you'll get a lot of great direct advice from this podcast. And Warwick is unique in that it really focuses on the behavioral sciences as well, which is an up-and-coming field in business. Before we get started, I know that fall application season is right around the corner. And if you're bewildered by the hundreds of MBA programs around the world and you need help finding one that fits you well, go over to touchmba.com. Tell us about yourself. I'd be happy to give you some school recommendations and admissions tips. And you can get your profile assessed with one click by 6 top business schools, including IE Business School in Spain, HEC Paris in France, of course, the Rotterdam School of Management in the Netherlands, CIBS in Shanghai, China, CUHK in Hong Kong, and NUS in Singapore. And these are all top 40 ranked schools in the world. So go head over there and sign up if you need help picking schools. Now let's get straight to this week's episode. And today we're going to be talking to Dr. Michael Shulver, who is the Assistant Dean of the Generalist Master's Programs at Warwick Business School in the UK. And I'm really excited to talk to Michael because Warwick has been quite an innovator in the business education space. And I think it's a top-ranked program. They have distance learning options. They have a full-time option. They have a global energy option. So I'm really looking forward to learn more about the full-time MBA and also to just get a feel for what Warwick is all about and what makes it different from other business schools. So just to give a little introduction to Michael, he got his MBA and PhD from Warwick Business School, and he now teaches operations management in the full-time MBA program and distance learning program and executive MBA program as well. So he has both the academic perspective and the admissions perspective to share with our listeners. So I want to thank you so much, Michael, for joining the show.
Great pleasure, Darren. Thanks for inviting me. I'm really glad to be here to talk about the program and me.
Michael, you would know better than anyone. What makes Warwick and the Warwick MBA unique from other top business schools in the UK and in Europe?
We have this range of MBA delivery modes. So we have full-time, we have executive, distance learning. We also have a global energy, more specialist MBA. And something that a lot of people perhaps aren't aware of is that after the first term, so that's the autumn term of the full-time MBA, the electives that students pick up are offered to all of the other programs. There's a number of slots on each of these electives for the full-timers. So one thing that is interesting and great fun, I think, is to mix it with students doing the other delivery modes. And that mixture makes for very interesting elective modules, I think. We get exposure to new people, new perspectives. The other thing is implicit in that, I guess, is that it allows us to offer a very big range of electives. It's actually very flexible, and there's interesting exposure to lots of different perspectives, not just at the level of the teaching, the content, but from the students as well. Another aspect is that we've been out there for ages with our practice and management program, and that's been a huge success. And that is this immersion idea. You get out there with, in this case, mostly non-profits, community organizations, and solve real problems that they have. So you're doing consulting with an organization right throughout your MBA, and that anchoring, that getting in touch with the real world of operations or marketing is very powerful in an MBA program. And for this coming year, we have an international immersion module. So we have number of client organizations in the UK that students will work with in order to help them out. And then the students will go overseas in the spring to look at similar organizations elsewhere. So there's the opportunity to do some classroom study overseas as part of the program, but perhaps more important than anything else, it internationalizes our practice and management program. We have a very large behavioral science group here, and we think this is important. It's considering things like the irrational behavior of consumers, thinking about what impacts on decision-making processes in people, in customers, and thinking about human behavior generally and how it has an impact on business. And that subject area has touched all of our teaching. So in a core strategy module, we have a piece on behavioral strategy. In fact, we have quite a lot of content on that. We have electives like leading for innovation, about the qualities of innovative leaders, but from a behavioral science perspective. So behavioral economics, behavioral science, psychology, these are playing a big part in our delivery because we know that these are important issues in business. And I think there's a real hunger for this out in the world of work, because hence the popularity of books like for economics, like Predictably Irrational by Dan Ariely. So that's a big part of our program. Three big things I think that make us unique.
Talking about the curriculum of the Warwick Full-time MBA, saw that you have 7 core courses, 5 electives that students can choose from, and then a consultancy project. And this is the question I wanted to ask you about. What exactly does this entail? Because it seems like students have to write 15,000 words on a business issue. Could you talk a bit more about what exactly that project involves?
There's 2 halves to it. It's a consultancy project, but there's an academic deliverable, which is a dissertation. And this is the 15,000 word piece. And they're linked, but the 2 bits serve different masters. So again, we firmly believe that our program should be anchored in commercial reality, that many of our students will want to go into consulting. So why not do a bit of it while you're here? We teach a lot of content in this core and elective modules, but then we want students to apply that and apply the results of their individual research. For example, just before we started, I was talking to one of my project students. Now, he is working for a UK government agency, the Highways Agency, and he is looking at service quality in that agency. So he's got a job to do. He's got to improve delivered service to the public and the UK government. And he's also got this academic deliverable, which is 15,000 word dissertation, which has to be robust. It's not a PhD, but it follows roughly the same sort of structure. It's got similar sort of content in it. And so this is quite a challenge. People get a lot out of it. It's a student managed project. Now, we help by providing client organizations who are interested in getting an MBA student to look at an issue and a problem, but the student has to map out a program of work. They have to negotiate with usually a senior management team. They have to think about presenting to them. We think that it develops the sort of people we want. There's the MBA product, which is a future leader in our societies. And we think that this kind of stuff is important, not so much dealing with exams that are prescribed where you know roughly what the content is, or doing an assignment and doing what other people have done before, but dealing with the uncertain, structuring the resolution of a problem themselves. And this is what this kind of project and dissertation helps develop. And it's a good test of how much the student has learned too. They can't apply that which they don't know. I remember doing mine. I was a nervous wreck. I got caught as a kind of political football in a manufacturing organization. So I had to deal with that in politics as well. That's the real world of business. Why shouldn't these guys deal with it?
Absolutely. I really see the focus on real world practical application that Warwick stresses in its programs. But I also saw that Warwick prides itself at excelling in research and teaching. And so for those in the audience that don't know much about Warwick, is the business school strong in any particular disciplines, and do students tend to pursue certain, say, career paths in finance or operations or marketing?
We have a strength in finance, but also we can deliver modules at the margins of finance. So think of behavioral finance. Think about the rational and, more interestingly, the not so rational decisions made by executive boards about finance. Think about what influences a finance director. We've got people who straddle disciplines, people who are psychologists and finance academics who deliver that sort of content. So there's a strength there, and it's innovative as well. There's not many others doing that. You mentioned operations. Yeah, that's a key research and teaching strength. Always has been. We've had a big operations group here in Warwick for the last 25 years or so. I'd say innovation management as well. So innovation and entrepreneurship, small I innovation and small E entrepreneurship, startups, we cover that quite well. And also entrepreneurial finance, startup finance, that kind of thing. So these are in some ways at the margins of hardcore finance teaching and research, but they're incredibly valuable for students. And we have the strength in depth at the level of research to be able to deliver those modules. Now, there's the rub though. Most modules delivered at MBA level are introductory. I think if you're doing a specialist master's, like a master's in finance, then clearly you'd come out of that and you've got a fair chance of moving on to become an investment banker. I wouldn't say that's true of a more generalist master's. So these are general and introductory programs. That means that the very high level cutting edge content will come into the actual delivery that our students get, but most of it is going to be classical material. You've got to get the basics out of the way first. There's no straightforward answer there. We have got particular strengths. And at the moment, I'd say in research, behavioral sciences, innovation, operations. In teaching, definitely operations, organization science, they do very well. We've got a couple of law lectures delivering business law type modules, and they're awesome. They're off the scale.
Okay. I would love to do another podcast with you talking about the future of the master's degree in business, and I know you're up to some exciting things there as well. But if we can now talk about student life, what events are the Warwick MBA students really looking forward to during their 12-month time?
I think it's hard to answer because they don't know. So it's perhaps easier if I say what the new students respond to most positively. I'd say that one of the things that excites them is that in our induction and boot camp, we have things like last year we had them down to the Royal Shakespeare Company in Stratford. They did some work in the theatre where we had the company training them in projection, in communicating, getting a message across from the sort of masters of the Shakespearean art. But then we get the students to think about, well, how could Royal Shakespeare Company improve its marketing presence, coming up with new service designs and so on. Now, at this point, the students don't have any models, tools, techniques, theory to apply, just the experience. And they're straight in there. We're challenging them with thinking creatively about the development of business. And they absolutely loved it. The Careers Bootcamp is interesting. All the way through the program, our Careers Plus team is working with students to help them develop as individuals, help them develop venal things like the CV, but their presence out there in the world, understand themselves, where they think they can exploit their strengths, what strengths they need to develop. But we do an intense period of that in week 0 before the program starts. So everyone is on site. And there are one-to-one interviews with careers consultants. There are group developmental activities. We nailed down certainly an action plan for the students in terms of their personal career development, but also we're assessing them, doing some rudimentary psychological assessments to look at where their strengths or weaknesses are, both as individuals and in groups. That self-analysis phase is something that they find very exciting. They learn a huge amount from it. And it's good fun. One part of it is a group project in which they make a movie. Another thing they like is just being here. It's a nice part of the country. It's really pretty here. There's a nice campus, and I like that, I think.
And how many students are in the full-time class?
Last year was 71. And this year, currently, we'll probably be about 55, which is a nice size class. That's great.
You mentioned how the business world is changing, and as MBA programs pop up in Asia and all around the world, why do you think candidates should get their MBA in England, of all places, and at Warwick, yeah?
Right, England. I don't know about England. I'm not English, by the way.
Sorry there. UK.
In the UK, I'm Welsh, in case you're wondering. All right, it's a strange one. I thought about this because I knew the question would come up. And one of the first thing I wrote down was, it's not London. It's expensive, it's busy, it's an exciting place to be, but it's intense, smelly. This place that we're at is an hour and 15 minutes away on the train. Much nicer. Being just south of Coventry, it's very convenient part of the UK to be in. To the west of us, we've got the second city, Birmingham. We've got this wonderful, calm, rural environment around us, but it's brimful of culture, like the Royal Shakespeare Company at Stratford. That's why here. Why the UK? Hard for me to answer that one. I love this country. I think we're open-minded. I think we're very tolerant. We've had stable government for a long time. People generally obey the rules here. It's interesting. I've just been working at Harvard for a little while, and some people I'm working with from Latin America, and I was criticizing the sort of political environment at home, talking about my government, and they're laughing. They said, "You, it's so stable. We can't tell the difference between your political parties at all. If you want to see, differences from one government to the next, come to Lima, come to Santiago. That's where it's different. Anyway, so sorry, I'm rambling there, but yeah, it's a very exciting, but also very calm and stable background in which you can concentrate. An MBA is hard work, and I think you want to avoid distractions of big busy cities and just get on with the job really, and you can do that here. It's just a civilized place to be in.
Great. And if we can talk a bit more about your admissions process, what type of candidate are you looking for?
Sadly, I need to talk about GMAT before I say anything.
Not sad at all.
Well, it is for me. I welcome your views on this, actually, Darren, because I think GMAT has become a problem for the industry. There's an obsession with GMAT. It's very important in the various rankings of MBA programs, and I think that programs focus on it too much. And sadly, it's a coachable qualification. There's some parts of the world where you can get intense coaching, and regardless of your innate ability to get through an MBA program, you can get a good GMAT score. The trouble is, we have to pay attention to GMAT scores. I'd love it if we could be a school that unilaterally breaks away from that, but it's unlikely in practice. GMAT is here to stay in the foreseeable future. So we're looking for a 650 GMAT score. With that said, I'm looking for students with a sense of honor, actually. I'm not looking for someone who's coming here just want to tick that MBA box and that's it. I'm looking for the future leaders of businesses, of communities, people who can make a real difference in the world. So I'm looking for rounded candidates. I'm looking for people who are actually doing something in their world at the minute beyond just progressing in their work. To quote Frances Fry, she's a service management academic in Harvard at the moment, no one objects to you extracting sort of the maximum value from the world around you, but we'd like you to give something back now and again. And I'm looking for people who want to do that. And there are ways in which I can detect that, So beyond GMAT, we interview, and we're looking for people who are willing and keen to give back to the world, to do something for their community, the community of MBA scholars around them, do something for the institution, do something for their countries. I'm looking for balanced individuals. We like the odd quirky student that is different and it makes things exciting, but more often than not, we're looking for balanced individuals who've got a broad range of skills to bring to the program.
I think that's great because that's the first time I've heard that adjective used as something an admissions director is really looking for, honor and honorable. I hate to get back to the GMAT again, but I saw that Warwick is looking for a quote-unquote well-balanced score. And I wanted to ask you exactly what you mean by that.
If it was a 650 and it was mostly being carried by incredible mathematical ability, then I'd need to do some digging. I wouldn't say that's a problem, but in interview, I'd be trying to figure out, is this person up to the job of expressing themselves in assignments, in presentations? So I'd want to check. If it's a balanced score, then I might not be worked up about that at interview, but I will probe if it's an unbalanced score. GMAT is a good way of figuring out whether someone's up to the demands of a MBA program. And I think actually anyone in the high 500s, low 600s is going to be just fine with that with an MBA program if they've got that sort of score. But that's where it should stop. I'd rather see something that more accurately reflects the natural ability of the student rather than have this coachable qualification. What do you think, Darren?
I tend to agree with you, but until there is an alternative, I think that it's just the easiest fallback way of assessing someone's academic aptitude because of the different standards around the world for colleges. But it sounds like the interview plays a very important role in the Warwick admissions process, and so I was just wondering if you could share one or two tips for candidates who make it to that stage, things for them to consider.
There are all sorts of books out there and guides on how to prepare for interviews and how to write your application. And we can always tell when when the candidate has got those because the little essays they prepare as part of the application, they sound so pat, like off the shelf, and it's fake, really. And I'd say just be natural. Sure, you should prepare, but be yourself. We won't be grilling you at interview. We're just looking to see who you really are. So we're looking at your aspirations, the sort of gaps in your knowledge, and how we might best fill those. Another thing is be prepared to think on your feet, but not necessarily provide answers. So we generally use a little one-liner case study to see how people respond to business challenges. I might say, right, here's a scenario. How might you respond to this? And one big problem is when someone just comes up with answers. Oh, I do this, I do this. Treat the interview process as an opportunity to demonstrate your ability and demonstrate latent willingness to be humble and try to solve problems. And that's about being willing to ask questions. So I throw a scenario at a candidate. I'm hoping that they'll come back and ask me questions. Well, what about this? What about that? If they come up with the odd solution, that's fine, but it's not essential. So be humble and ask questions. You need a good standard of English. So I would say just practice. We're fine with people whose first language isn't English. The overwhelming majority of our students are in that position. But to prepare for the interview, I strongly recommend immersing yourself in English. If you've got some colleagues who speak English routinely, be disciplined. Force yourself to talk in English and talk about business issues. It is so helpful at the interview stage. You'll sell yourself so much better if you practice English.
Great tips. And Warwick, I saw, has one deadline at the end of July for its September intake. And I know that you encourage international applicants to apply before the end of May for visa reasons. But do applicants have a better chance if they apply earlier in the cycle than those who apply later?
Possibly. The same standards apply, but it's a numbers game, isn't it? Let's say we're in this wonderful world where the MBA market is buoyant again, and it's looking like I'm easily going to fill my class, and I have a choice between two students because the class is nearly full in July or June or whatever. Then chances are someone's not going to get on the program then because I'm going to just take the best one. Whereas if those two candidates were coming in December or January or whatever, then fine, I could take them both. It makes sense to apply early. I understand that in the current economic climate, that's scary, isn't it? To commit to that time out of work and that expense. But the trade-off is that I think practically you got a better chance of getting on the program. I would say I apply early. If you're dead keen on a particular institution, get in there. Maybe do a visit if you can. Talk to some students. Get a feel for what it's like. Do your homework, and you're in a better position.
Great.
Really.
Well, I appreciate just the straight talk on the admissions, and I'm sure that'll be very helpful for our listeners. If we could talk about financing now, what percentage of your class gets scholarships, and can you let us know your average scholarship amounts?
So let's be clear what a scholarship is, first of all. Sometimes they're aimed at the worthy, someone from a deprived background or an area of the world that you want to support, but mostly it's a marketing tool. We're using scholarships to encourage those students we think are awesome. We really want them on the program. And we know full well that we're in competition with other institutions, and candidates are aware of that as well. And so we're modifying the sticker price in order to get those very clever, very able people. As to amounts, we're talking just over 30K for our program. I might give a discount of a third if someone was really, really good. So I give them a 10K scholarship. I've got a fairly healthy scholarship pot, but I'll do that when I really want someone, when they're ticking most of the boxes that I'm interested in. Rightly or wrongly, I want to see more women in senior management roles. I think it's healthy for program diversity, and there's not enough women at executive board levels, and there's certainly not enough women on MBA programs. I'm probably on dodgy ground in terms of political correctness there, but I would certainly like to get more very able women into our programs, and so I might use a scholarship pot there. Another one is like where someone is incredibly able, but if from a clearly an area of the world which will help me tick some program diversity boxes. So one of the rankings organizations will look at diversity, and it could be that I need to get some more people in from sub-Saharan Africa or Romania, wherever it is really, and I might use a scholarship there. Now, there's nothing a student could do about that. It's just about me using this as a sort of very crude tool to balance my cohort. Still, I guess you were interested in what can the student do. Frankly, be good. A high GMAT score is going to help. Someone is clearly a high flyer, going places. Someone who I think is honorable is going to contribute. I don't have an algorithm or anything like that. Jeremy Todd, my admissions guy, and I just sit down, we look at candidates and think, right, we need Jane. She is awesome. She is really clever. Let's throw some money at her, see what she says. If it sticks and she comes, great. For the 2013 entry, with a 2 million plus pot for the scholarships, so we got the money, and I guess be cheeky, do ask. It gets irritating if students are obviously playing us off against other schools. I think if they're be diplomatic, be subtle about that. We can usually tell when it's happening. That vexes us, but the pot is considerable, all right, and it's it's just one of the tools I use, and just be good and make your applications stand out. We've got a big pot. By the way, that 2 million covers a doctoral program as well. I've got the money. I don't throw it away. I get good candidates anyway. All right. But if there's someone who I think might be tempted by CAS, by London Business School, whatever, then I'll put some money in there.
Great. And does Warwick have any loan options for international students?
No, nothing like that. There are all sorts of schemes around, but they're not necessarily associated with us. There are lots of charitable trusts, I guess the British Council. There's not so much loans. I mean, there's grants, basically. There's grant aid about, but certainly the institution doesn't have any. There's a scholarship pot, and if you're good, I'd be very surprising if you didn't get an offer.
If we could talk about career prospects, and because that's often forefront on MBA's minds. So I saw that Financial Times ranked Warwick number 3 for ROI. That's a great ranking. So I just wanted to ask more about what unique recruiting advantages Warwick gives its students versus other business schools.
The honest answer is an incredibly hard-working Careers Plus team. So Careers Plus is our name for our personal career development. They do more than that, but it's mainly about careers. Critically, they're not a placement service. So we don't do that, but we really work hard to get employers here on site to give presentations, to talk to students. We support students in any way they can to get out there and meet with firms. So for example of that, it doesn't sound like it's recruiting, immediately, but case study competitions, they have really taken off in the last few years, and I've been blown away by our students' response to that. And one way in which they're good is that you get exposed to business leaders who are in a position to recruit, to sign checks. Our students have had wonderful exposure to some very high-powered executives who said, come work for us. Is our recruiting advantage? Well, I don't know what the other teams are like. I'm pretty sure that London Business School or Imperial, they have good careers teams, but I just know that I've got a good one. And there's a result there. What's that ROI mean? Actually, it means that The salary has gone from A to A plus, quite a lot of money. B is really good. That's the usual thing, and it's a qualitative side to it as well. But you must be doing something right there.
What would you say to those coming into your program who want to change careers but are concerned that it might be tougher to do in a 12-month time frame?
It is hard, yeah. So I was in that position. Actually, I was in the Royal Air Force. So I was an aerospace engineer, and I wanted to move into, I guess, business consulting, maybe with an engineering bent. And I knew I'd have to make that leap, have to change. And I ended up in academia, and it worked for me. And how does it work? We have this induction, this careers boot camp, where we are very carefully assessing the sort of needs and aspirations and the current sort of skill set of students. Well, that's a key ingredient in helping students manage that transition. We've got to be realistic. Let's say you were in Mumbai working for 5 years as a shared services IT consultant, then chances are you'll be very attractive to a potential employer, but in that field, actually. So you might pick up a job in the UK or Paris or whatever, might go back to India and get way more money. But there's an inertia that is associated with a skill set that makes it hard to make that transition. But we help where we can. And that's why we work so hard in the earliest parts of the program to start this gap analysis, to start this process of identifying where the candidate is, the student is, and where they want to be in the future. We help them make the change.
There's this perception, I think, this year that it's tough to get jobs in Europe. So I was just wondering how many of your students, roughly on average, stay in the UK to work after the program, and whether that trend has been going up or down.
It's certainly going down. Both the perception and the reality of the current visa climate is not good. There have been some very harsh decisions on the part of the UK government, and they haven't completely played out yet. We're currently doing a trial. We're doing some telephone interviews to see what the current picture is. So it's hard to say for the current cohort, but I think there's fewer than in previous years. I can't give exact figures because I don't know, frankly. We're currently doing the work, but it is not healthy. It is hard. And I suspect there'll be a bit of a backlash eventually. Things will change a little. Currently, it's tough.
I guess my last question on careers then is, given that climate, what would you advise candidates, if there's one thing you could tell them to make the most out of the career opportunities they get from a school like Warwick? Well, what should they do?
So with passion, Michael says, you can take a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. The facilities are there and they're incredible, but you've got to use them as a student. You've got to exploit them. When I look at the students who are successful in finding work, they really milk the Careers Plus unit and everything that they have to offer. They've milked it dry. We create a context in which it's possible to get what you want, but you have to work it. So that's my advice. Don't confuse a careers development service with a placement service. Very few schools around the world have placements. The people who really had huge differences in their, well, crudely salary levels, but in terms of interest and quality of working life improvements, and they're people who wrote hundreds of applications. They networked left and right. They were out there shaking hands with, meeting people, turning up at all the alumni events. They really worked the system. It's 1 year where, let's say you've got a family where your wife or husband gives you a break, where your kids know that you're not going to, be around for a little bit, where your friends know you're going to be a bit boring. So everyone else is giving you this space to get on and focus. And I'd say use that time to milk the career system, make it work for you. I think it's harder than the academic content. It is probably the most difficult thing. But if you start early, engage early with the process, and we encourage that with our Careers Bootcamp, then you're on the road to success there.
Great. And what is the best way for candidates to contact students and alumni of your program?
What we got is a list of consenting alumni. If you want to talk to an alumni, we've got a recruiting team. Jeremy Todd runs it. All the info is on the website. Just get in touch and ask, can we contact some alumni? We've got a pool of people who are more than happy to talk. We get ad hoc queries from students asking for contacts in specific locations as well. So sometimes we can help there. So we've got an alumni database, And it might be just so easy for us to say, right, we know that we got Joe who works in media marketing and this candidate wants to talk. Maybe we'll try and engineer a meetup, that kind of thing. So we've got a list, we've got a pool, but we also can set up ad hoc queries. There's also a LinkedIn group where potential recruits can talk as well. That might be the most useful of all, actually.
Finally, I know, Michael, you were just in Singapore a couple of months ago, and I'm sure you're traveling all around the world teaching and promoting the program. So is there anything else that you just wish more people knew about Warwick MBA?
One thing we do is offer modules. If there's sufficient demand, we'll put them up in other countries. So that benefits both students and tutors. So I really like going to Hong Kong and Singapore, Far East generally. So I'm keen to teach my modules there. If we get enough students, then we can run a module. And so if we get demand from executives in the region, people on the exec MBA program, that is, then we'll set something up and the full-timers can go on that too. So when we talked first, I was teaching my service operations management module in an hotel in Singapore, and it worked fantastically. So that's quite a nice environment to be in, and that's really fantastic. It's almost a holiday. It's hard for the students in that they're busy working, as am I, and it's intense. It's over a week, but it's great fun, and we could socialize after the program. There's something else the students might want to know about as well, or I'd be keen for them to know it, and it's come up already, but I did the MBA and I did it in 93, 94, and it helped me change. Now, the MBA has evolved massively since. The core is the core, but the way we deliver it has improved massively. It's different, it's exciting, it's vibrant. But I like to think that because I've done it, I've been intimately associated with it, I can offer a lot as assistant dean. I'm passionately connected to this program. This is not like a job that I'm doing for a short period and I'll move on to something else after. This is what I like to. I enjoy getting up in the morning to do this work and developing the program, making it better. I'm a bit sad in that respect, but it's what I like doing. And so that maybe is different as well. I'm a product of the program and it's my baby now and I'm making it grow and I'm very excited about that. So there are two things. Those little modules overseas, they're great fun. You can do those if you want. And also, it's me, it's my baby, and I'm a product of the program as well.
Great. So just to close the program, could you give us 3 words you would use to describe the Warwick MBA?
We're relevant, we're innovative, and we're caring.
Great. Thank you so much for your time, Michael. And maybe we can do that podcast in the future about master's programs and versus MBAs and so forth.
That would be a pleasure, Darren. No problem at all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Touch MBA podcast. Don't be shy. We have a mailing list. Go to touchmba.com and get yourself signed up. And we'll keep you posted with the best tips and insider interviews on how to get into your #1 school. You can also find us on Twitter and Facebook at Touch MBA. See you soon.